The storm roared like an untamed beast, whipping through the dense forests of Willow Creek with an unrelenting fury. Snowflakes, sharp and biting, fell in a ceaseless cascade, blurring the line between earth and sky. The streets were empty, the town's usual chatter replaced by the ominous howl of the wind. In the middle of this chaos, 5-year-old Tommy Mitchell stood alone, lost and shivering in the vast white wilderness. Tommy hadn't meant to wander far. One moment he was building a snowman in his backyard, his small hands carefully packing snow into the perfect shape. The next he was chasing what he thought were rabbit tracks, his childlike curiosity pulling him deeper into the woods. He didn't realize he was lost until the snow began to thicken, the gentle flurries turning into a relentless storm. "Mama," he called, his voice barely rising above the wind. His heart pounded as he spun around, realizing he couldn't see the house anymore. The once familiar woods now looked like a maze of towering, snow-covered trees. His small boots sank into the snow, and his tiny hands, bare and red from the cold, clutched his coat tightly. The snowstorm was growing fiercer by the second. Tommy's tears froze as they streamed down his cheeks, and his small body shivered uncontrollably. He stumbled forward, desperate to find his way back, but each step felt heavier than the last. Finally, too exhausted to go on, he collapsed under a fallen tree, his little frame curling up for what he feared might be the last time. Miles away, Max, a stray German shepherd, stirred in an old barn. The dog had been a loner for months, wary of humans after a life of abandonment. But tonight was different. The storm carried a sound that cut through the howling wind, a faint, desperate cry. Max lifted his head, his sharp ears twitching. Something in that cry stirred him, igniting an instinct buried deep within. Without hesitation, Max pushed through the barn's loose boards, his thick coat shielding him from the storm's wrath. He moved with purpose, his powerful legs cutting through the knee-deep snow. He didn't know where the cry would lead, but he knew he had to follow it. As Max approached, Tommy's frozen eyes flickered open. Through the swirling snow, he saw a dark, towering figure. His breath caught in fear until the figure stepped closer. It wasn't a bear or a wolf. It was a dog. A massive dog with warm, intelligent eyes that seemed to promise safety. Max pressed his thick body against Tommy's, shielding the boy from the wind. The warmth of the dog's fur seeped into Tommy's frozen limbs, giving him a glimmer of hope. With his last bit of strength, Tommy buried his hands in Max's fur. "Good doggy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Max let out a deep, rhythmic bark, loud enough to cut through the storm. He barked again and again, a beacon of hope in the deadly blizzard. Somewhere in the distance, searchers stopped in their tracks, straining to hear through the howling wind. This wasn't just a rescue, it was the beginning of a story that would change an entire town forever. The people of Willow Creek were no strangers to harsh winters, but this storm was different. The snowstorm had arrived earlier than expected, catching the small town off guard. Visibility was down to mere feet, and the bitter cold seeped into every crevice of the town's streets and homes. Inside the Mitchell household, Sarah Mitchell, Tommy's mother, paced the floor with frantic urgency, her heart pounding like a drum. "Tommy!" she screamed out into the white abyss, her voice cracking as the storm swallowed it whole. She'd been clearing the driveway when she realized Tommy was no longer in the yard. At first, she thought he was hiding, perhaps playing a game, but as the minutes ticked by, panic settled deep in her chest. Her little boy was out there, somewhere in the storm. The call for help spread quickly. The entire town mobilized in a matter of minutes. Chief Mike Anderson, the town's steadfast leader, gathered a team of volunteers at the community center. His face, typically calm and composed, now wore a grim expression. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice steady but heavy with urgency. "Temperatures are dropping fast, and the visibility won't hold. We need to find him in the next hour. Before—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of his words lingered in the air. Flashlights, snowmobiles, and shovels were distributed as volunteers bundled up and headed into the storm, their voices echoing Tommy's name into the relentless blizzard. Among them was Officer Jenny Martinez, a rookie with a sharp eye and a heart of gold. Jenny had never been in a situation like this, but her determination burned brighter than the cold. Meanwhile, Max barked tirelessly, his deep, booming voice cutting through the storm like a signal flare. The rhythm of his barks was deliberate, as though he understood their importance. Tommy clung to him, his tiny hands buried in the dog's thick fur, holding on for dear life. Max shifted his body, shielding the boy from the worst of the wind, his instincts guiding every move. Not far away, Officer Martinez stopped in her tracks. "Wait!" she called out to her search partner, her ears straining against the howl of the wind. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" her partner yelled back, his flashlight barely piercing the snow. "A dog barking. This way." Jenny's voice carried a spark of hope as she adjusted her path, trudging through the knee-deep snow toward the sound. Max, sensing the searchers nearby, barked even louder, his voice a lifeline in the storm. As they approached, Jenny's flashlight caught a glimpse of movement, a dark figure hunched over in the snow. Her heart jumped. "Over here!" she yelled, waving her light to signal the others. What she saw left her speechless. A massive German shepherd was curled protectively around a small, shivering boy. The dog's thick fur was coated in frost, but his stance was firm, his eyes unwavering as he shielded the child from the elements. Jenny dropped to her knees, her voice soft and reassuring. "Hey, buddy, it's okay now. We've got you." Max didn't growl or bark. Instead, he stood slowly, his tail wagging faintly as if to say, "I trust you." Tommy's small voice, weak but clear, broke the silence. "His name is Max," he whispered, clutching the dog's fur tightly. Jenny glanced at her partner, her eyes wide with disbelief. "How does he know the dog's name?" she murmured, but there was no time for questions. They had to move quickly. The paramedics arrived moments later, wrapping Tommy in a thick blanket and checking his vitals. Miraculously, the boy was responsive and showed no signs of severe frostbite. As they prepared to carry Tommy to safety, he whimpered and reached for Max. "He has to come too," he insisted, his voice trembling but resolute. Sarah arrived just in time to hear her son's plea, her tear-streaked face lighting up with relief at the sight of him. Her gaze shifted to Max, who stood tall and proud beside the boy, his fur dusted with snow, but his eyes steady and calm. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog, her voice breaking with gratitude. Max's tail wagged again, this time with more certainty. The storm still raged, but in that moment, something extraordinary had taken place. Max, the stray who had spent months avoiding human contact, had not only saved a life, but sparked a connection that would soon transform an entire community. The small hospital in Willow Creek had never seen anything quite like this. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room cast a soft glow on Tommy's pale face as doctors and nurses bustled around him. Wrapped in thick blankets and sipping on a warm cup of cocoa, he looked small and fragile, but his faint smile told everyone that he would be okay. "Remarkable," murmured Dr. Patricia Chen, the head of the hospital. "Despite nearly 2 hours in the blizzard, he's escaped with only mild frostbite and minor hypothermia. It's a miracle." But Sarah knew better. "It's not a miracle," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears as she stroked her son's hair. It was Max. Outside the hospital, another miracle was unfolding. Max, who had followed the ambulance in Chief Anderson's pickup truck, refused to leave. He paced the parking lot, his watchful eyes locked on the hospital entrance. Despite the frigid air and the layer of frost clinging to his fur, he remained steadfast, a silent sentinel. Chief Anderson, who had spent months trying to catch the elusive stray, watched through the hospital window, shaking his head in disbelief. "That dog. He's been avoiding humans for months, and now he won't budge." Inside, Tommy kept asking for Max. "He talked to me, Mom," the boy insisted, his voice still raspy from the cold. "Not with words, but I knew what he was saying. He told me to stay awake, that help was coming." Sarah blinked back tears, her heart swelling with gratitude. She glanced at Dr. Chen, who smiled softly. "Let's bring him in," the doctor said. "After what he did, he's earned a place inside." When Max entered the hospital lobby, the scene was surreal. Nurses paused mid-step, their gazes drawn to the massive German shepherd as he padded through the doors. His fur was still dusted with snow, but his posture was calm, almost regal. He moved purposefully, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Tommy. The boy's face lit up. "Max!" he cried, holding out his arms. The dog trotted over, his tail wagging faintly, and pressed his nose against Tommy's small hand. The hospital staff couldn't believe what they were seeing. Phones came out, and within minutes, pictures of the heroic dog were being shared online. The local news station sent a reporter to capture the incredible story. Max, however, seemed oblivious to the attention. His focus remained on Tommy, his gaze unwavering as if to say, "I'm still here. You're safe now." As Sarah watched the interaction, a single thought echoed in her mind. How could I ever let him go? She hadn't planned on adopting a dog. As a single mother working 2 jobs, her plate was already full. But looking at her son, his tiny arms wrapped around Max's thick neck, she knew there wasn't really a choice to make. "Yes," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "He's family now." When Tommy and Sarah brought Max home, it didn't take long for the dog to establish his place in their lives. He moved through the small house like he'd always belonged there, inspecting each room with a curious nose and a watchful eye. "Mom," Tommy whispered that first night, his voice tinged with awe. "Max isn't just a dog. He's my guardian angel." Sarah smiled, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that her son might be right. Within days, Max began exhibiting behaviors that left Sarah and the neighbors speechless. Every night before Tommy went to bed, Max would patrol the house, checking every door and window with meticulous care. He'd settle only after making sure everything was secure. "It's like having a furry security system," Sarah joked to her neighbor Ellen, who had stopped by with a bag of dog supplies. Ellen, a retired veterinarian, watched Max with professional interest. "He's not just any stray," she said, her tone thoughtful. "His behavior suggests he had specialized training. See how he positions himself between Tommy and anyone new? That's protection dog training." The mystery of Max's past deepened when Officer Jenny Martinez decided to check his microchip. "It's registered to a training facility in Colorado that closed 3 years ago," she reported. "After that, the trail goes cold." But Max's past mattered less than his present. To Tommy, he was more than a dog. He was a lifeline. The boy who had struggled with anxiety since his father's death 2 years earlier began to flourish. Nightmares that had plagued him disappeared, and his kindergarten teacher noticed a marked improvement in his social interactions. "He tells the other kids that Max is his guardian angel," the teacher told Sarah during a parent-teacher conference. "And honestly, watching them together, it's hard to disagree." As word of Max's heroic rescue spread through the small town of Willow Creek, the dog became nothing short of a legend. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers stopped by Sarah and Tommy's house just to catch a glimpse of the dog who had braved a deadly blizzard to save a lost boy. Local newspapers ran headlines like, "Blizzard Hero, Stray Dog Saves 5-Year-Old," and the story quickly captured the hearts of everyone in town. It wasn't long before Max became more than just a family pet. He became a symbol of hope and resilience for the entire community. But Max wasn't content to bask in the attention. His instincts drove him to continue protecting those around him, and it didn't take long for the town to notice. One evening, just days after Tommy brought Max home, Sarah found the dog standing by the front door, his ears perked and his body tense. At first, she thought it was nothing, but when she opened the door, she saw their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, struggling with her groceries in the snow. Without hesitation, Max bounded out, gently nudging the heavy bags toward the porch, while keeping an eye on Mrs. Jensen's every move. "Thank you, Max," Mrs. Jensen said with a chuckle, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "You're not just a hero. You're a gentleman." These small acts of kindness became a regular occurrence. Whether it was guiding children safely across the street or alerting Sarah to a leaky faucet in the basement, Max seemed to have an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong and spring into action. The mystery of Max's past lingered like a shadow over his new life. One day, Officer Jenny Martinez showed up at Sarah's door with news. "We've traced Max's microchip," she said, holding a file. "His original name was Atlas, and he was part of an elite program that trained service dogs for veterans with PTSD. Sarah's eyes widened as Jenny continued. "The program shut down 3 years ago due to funding cuts. Atlas was placed with a handler in Minnesota, but the handler passed away unexpectedly. After that, well, he disappeared." The pieces of Max's story began to fall into place. His reluctance to trust humans, his protective instincts, and his extraordinary ability to comfort those in distress, all of it made sense now. Sarah looked at Max, who was lying by Tommy's feet, his head resting on the boy's lap. "You've been through so much," she whispered, stroking his fur, "and yet you still have so much love to give." With this new information, Max's story took on even greater significance. He wasn't just a stray dog who happened to save a boy. He was a trained protector who had rediscovered his purpose in the most unexpected way. As winter melted into spring, Max's influence in Willow Creek grew in ways no one could have predicted. The local elementary school invited Sarah and Max to visit, hoping the dog's story could inspire the students. What started as a simple visit quickly turned into something much bigger. During a show-and-tell session, Max made his way around the classroom, greeting each child with gentle curiosity. One little girl, Sophie, had been selectively mute since witnessing a car accident 6 months earlier. She sat in the corner, watching Max intently but not engaging. Max, as if sensing her hesitation, walked over and lay down beside her, his head resting on his paws. The room fell silent as Sophie slowly reached out to touch his fur. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she whispered, "Good boy." It was the first time she had spoken in months. "That dog is extraordinary," said Dr. James Morrison, a local child psychologist who had been observing Max's interactions. "He's not just providing comfort, he's actively helping these children process their trauma." From that moment on, Max became a regular visitor at the school, working with children who struggled with anxiety, loss, and fear. His ability to connect with them was nothing short of miraculous. Max's incredible ability to connect with people, especially children, did not go unnoticed. Dr. James Morrison approached Sarah with an idea that would take Max's impact to a whole new level. "Sarah," he said during one of Max's school visits, "I've been working with therapy animals for years, but Max is different. He's not just reacting, he's healing. I think we should create something bigger, something that can help more children like Tommy and Sophie." Sarah hesitated. As a single mother juggling 2 jobs, the thought of taking on a new project seemed daunting. But when she saw Max lying beside a group of children, all of them smiling and relaxed, she knew this was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. With Dr. Morrison's help, they launched the Atlas Project, named after Max's original identity. The program aimed to train therapy dogs to assist children dealing with emotional and behavioral challenges. Max became the cornerstone of the initiative, not just as a therapy dog, but as a teacher for other dogs. The program quickly gained traction. Parents whose children had been helped by Max volunteered their time and resources. Local businesses donated supplies, and the school offered a dedicated space for therapy sessions. Max worked tirelessly, demonstrating techniques to new therapy dogs and their handlers, while continuing to bring comfort to those who needed it most. One day during a therapy session, Max guided a young boy named Aaron through a panic attack. The child's sobs turned into steady breaths as Max lay beside him, his calm presence grounding the boy. "It's like he knows exactly what to do," Sarah marveled. Dr. Morrison nodded. "Max isn't just helping these kids. He's showing us what unconditional love looks like. That's something we can all learn from." Just as the Atlas Project began to flourish, trouble loomed on the horizon. One morning, Sarah received a call from a representative of the National Service Dog Association. "Mrs. Mitchell," the voice on the other end began, "we've been made aware of your program, and while it's impressive, there are legal and ethical concerns about using a former military-trained dog in a civilian therapy program." The news spread quickly through Willow Creek, casting a shadow over the community's newfound hope. Parents who had seen their children thrive under Max's care rallied to defend the program. Meetings were held, petitions were signed, and letters poured in from across the state. Colonel James Hawthorne, the retired officer who had overseen Max's training, flew in from Colorado to lend his support. "Atlas, Max, was trained to serve, to heal, and to protect," he told the review board. "What he's doing now is the natural extension of that training. To stop this program would be a disservice to everything he stands for." The board deliberated for weeks, leaving the community in suspense. During this time, Max continued his work, seemingly unfazed by the uncertainty. His calm demeanor and unwavering dedication served as a reminder of why the program existed in the first place. The turning point came during Willow Creek's annual summer festival. Families gathered in the town square for games, food, and live music, with Max and Tommy performing a demonstration of therapy dog techniques. The day was filled with laughter and joy until disaster struck. A malfunctioning carnival ride sent a metal beam crashing toward a group of children. Chaos erupted as parents screamed and rushed to pull their kids to safety. But Max reacted before anyone else. With laser focus, he herded the children away from the danger, barking commands that even the most panicked kids seemed to understand. He then moved systematically through the crowd, comforting frightened children and guiding emergency responders to those in need. It was like he knew exactly what to do, Chief Anderson said later. Max wasn't just a hero in the blizzard, he's a hero every day. Footage of Max's actions went viral, bringing national attention to the Atlas Project. The same organizations that had questioned the program now offered their support, providing funding and resources to expand its reach. With the program secure and thriving, Max's role began to shift. At 8 years old, his movements were slower, and Sarah noticed he needed more rest after busy days. Dr. Ellen, the town's retired veterinarian, confirmed what Sarah already knew. Max can't keep up this pace forever. It's time to think about the next chapter. The community came together once again, this time to ensure Max's legacy would live on. Under Colonel Hawthorne's guidance, they developed a training program for new therapy dogs, with Max as their mentor. His experience and wisdom proved invaluable as he demonstrated techniques and behaviors to younger dogs. One of Max's protégés, a golden retriever named Luna, quickly became a star pupil. With Max's guidance, she learned to read children's emotions and respond with the same gentle intuition that had made him so extraordinary. For Tommy, Max's semi-retirement brought them even closer. The boy, now 8 years old, spent his afternoons helping train the new dogs, proudly sharing Max's story with anyone who would listen. "Max saved me in the snow," he told a new group of children one day, "but now he's saving everyone else too." As autumn painted Willow Creek in shades of gold and crimson, Max's role in the community began to evolve. Now 10 years old, his once boundless energy was tempered by age. His muzzle had turned gray, and he moved with a measured grace that reflected his years of service. But his spirit remained unbroken, and his presence continued to inspire everyone around him. The new therapy dogs trained under the Atlas Project were flourishing. Luna, the golden retriever Max had mentored, was now leading therapy sessions, bringing comfort to children and adults alike. Another dog, a playful Labrador named Rocky, had a knack for lifting the spirits of even the most withdrawn children. Though Max was no longer the program's mainstay, his influence was felt in every wagging tail and gentle nuzzle. Sarah, ever watchful of Max's well-being, made sure he spent more time at home with Tommy. The two had developed an unbreakable bond over the years, and their quiet moments together became even more precious. On cool autumn evenings, they would sit in the backyard, watching the stars while Tommy shared stories about school and the other therapy dogs. One evening, as they sat together, Tommy turned to his mother. "Mom," he began, his voice filled with quiet reverence, "do you think Max knows how much he's done for all of us?" Sarah smiled, stroking Max's thick fur. "I think he does, sweetheart, and I think he knows that his work isn't done. It's just changed. He's teaching others to carry on what he started." Winter returned to Willow Creek with its usual ferocity. One particularly cold night, Sarah received a call from Officer Martinez. A multi-car accident on the highway had left several families stranded at the community center, including children from a trauma recovery group. The children were scared and disoriented, and the counselors were struggling to keep them calm. Sarah prepared to bring Luna and the other therapy dogs to the center, but Max, who had been dozing by the fireplace, rose to his feet. He walked purposefully to the door, his eyes clear and determined. "Are you sure, old friend?" Sarah asked softly, her voice filled with emotion. Max thumped his tail once, a signal that he was ready. At the community center, the sight of Max entering the room brought an immediate shift. His calm demeanor and wise eyes seemed to reassure the frightened children. He approached each one with gentle precision, lying down beside the most distressed and offering his quiet, steady presence. One little girl, who had been huddled in a corner, whispered, "He's like an angel." Her counselor, with tears in her eyes, nodded in agreement. Max's actions that night solidified his legacy. He wasn't just a dog who had saved a boy in a blizzard. He was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of love. The following spring, the community gathered for a special event in Max's honor. The town square was filled with laughter, music, and stories about the dog who had changed so many lives. A plaque was unveiled, commemorating Max's heroic deeds and his pivotal role in creating the Atlas Project. Tommy, now 9 years old, stood beside Max as the crowd cheered. Though his voice was small, it carried the weight of heartfelt gratitude. Max taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you keep going, even when you are. He saved me, but he also saved everyone here in some way. Max, sitting proudly at Tommy's side, wagged his tail as if to acknowledge the sentiment. Though his movements were slower and his days as a full-time therapy dog were behind him, his legacy continued through the dogs he had trained and the lives he had touched. The Atlas Project expanded beyond Willow Creek, with therapy dogs trained under Max's guidance working in schools, hospitals, and community centers across the region. Donations poured in, and national organizations adopted the program as a model for similar initiatives. One crisp morning, as the first rays of sunlight kissed the treetops, Sarah found Max lying peacefully in his favorite spot in the backyard. His breathing was steady, but his body seemed tired. She sat beside him, stroking his fur and whispering words of love and gratitude. Tommy joined them, wrapping his arms around Max's neck. "You're the best dog in the whole world," he said softly, tears streaming down his cheeks. Max thumped his tail one last time, his eyes filled with the same warmth and love that had defined his life. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Max passed away peacefully, surrounded by the family he had saved and the community he had transformed. Though Max was gone, his legacy lived on. The Atlas Project continued to grow, touching countless lives and spreading the message of compassion and courage that Max had embodied. In Willow Creek, his story became a part of the town's identity, a reminder that even the smallest acts of love can create ripples that change the world. As Sarah and Tommy walked through the town square one spring afternoon, they paused by the plaque dedicated to Max. Tommy looked up at his mother, a determined glint in his eye. "I want to help other kids the way Max helped me," he said. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I think Max would love that." Together, they continued walking, their hearts filled with the knowledge that Max's journey had been more than a story of survival. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals.